I'd like to read you the first couple of sections of my book, Bruja. To give you a background about Bruja, this was my first horse that I'd ever owned. I was 13 when I got her, and we grew up together in the East End of Glasgow in a housing scheme, getting up to all sorts of mischief. She was an amazing horse, a remarkable individual, and she had a great impact on everyone that she met. I would like to share this story with you because when she passed away, I was so upset and distraught that I wrote down as much as I could remember. So everything you read in these pages happened as close to how I remember as possible. Bruja. The parting. Choking pain closed my throat as the phone receiver quietly clicked into place. The blurred vision of my window drew me inwards to my memories, to my life. Today, my best friend would die, and I would have to do for her what she couldn't do herself. I would have to take her life and set her free from misery. Agony swept through me as my very heart beat at my chest, sobs wrecking my body, my tears washing the morning grime from my face. I couldn't be like this for her. Today of all days, I must be strong. I must give her the peace she deserved and ease the break to this world by sending her onwards with love. My husband called quietly from below. It's Bruja, isn't it? Yes, I whispered. It's time for her to go. He came up and sat beside me. Knowing better than to try and hug and comfort me, he simply sat and let me remember. The meeting. I pulled the seed off the dandelion. We called them hairy men. I closed my eyes and spoke from my heart. I wish I had a horse. Reverently, I planted the seed, hoping it would grow and grant my dream. I must have single-handedly planted most of the dandelions in our housing scheme in Mount Vernon. Every one carried my prayer. For as long as I could remember, all I ever wanted was to ride and own a horse. That Wayne, his horse is daft, was the war cry of my mum whenever she caught me galloping up and down the back garden with her good sweeping brush, one of my dad's socks, invariably one of his good ones, stuffed with newspaper to make the shape of a head and tied to the end of a brush shaft. Of course, my papa got the blame of my obsessions. While my dad was at work and my mum went to her part-time job, Gran and Papa looked after my brother and me. Papa would sit me on his knee and tell me the stories of the big horses that he had looked after and how they used to pull the bread vans in Glasgow. He told me all of their names and the adventures they would get into. One name I still recall was Chum. My papa made the fatal mistake on a hot summer's day of taking pity on the poor sweating horse and stopped outside a well-known tally or Italian ice cream shop near Thornley Bank. This shop sold the best homemade Italian ice cream in the area, and he bought Chum an ice cream. To cool down after hiking up that big hill. Of course, every time he took that particular route with Chum, the horse would stop outside the shop, summer or winter, and refuse to move till my papa had bought him an ice cream. My most treasured possession is a chrome-plated shoe from Chum, and it hangs still in my house. My imagination was fired. I too longed for that special friendship that I could tell my papa had with all of his horses. On a visit to my dad's Uncle Charlie, a Doonhamer from Dumfriesshire, I remember what Mum said the first time that she met him. They'd been talking for a while about things in general, and she had mentioned my papa and the bred horses. "Och, lassie, I've followed the horses for years," he cried. "Oh," replied my mother, "I didn't know you were a betting man." Uncle Charlie wheezed with laughter. No, lassie, I was a ploughman. You know, the Plugh horses. Uncle Charlie was a retired ploughman. The highlight of that visit was when Uncle Charlie said he would go and see one of his horses who was retired in a field not far away. I watched in awe as the huge white horse lolloped down the field towards us when my Uncle Charlie whistled. I was allowed to pat him, give him slices of bread, and give him the most honoured privilege of sitting on his back. Well, that was me hooked. My papa died when I was 4, but the longing he had placed in my heart grew and grew, and I begged and begged my mum and dad for a horse. You're too young. We can't afford one, were the replies. I resigned myself to the fact that I would never be able to have a real live horse. When I was 8, my friend Scott was allowed to go to our local riding school, Foxley Equestrian Centre, for riding lessons. I begged and cried that I allowed me to go, and eventually my mum gave in. My first lesson cost the enormous sum of £1.25 and lasted a full hour. It was an hour of heaven for me. A chance to sit on a real live horse and learn the majestic art of horse riding. I think to this day that my parents were hoping that I would get it out of my system if they allowed me to continue to ride. At the age of 12, I was still riding once a week and was given the opportunity of looking after one of my friend's horses at the weekend. My friend kept her horse at her uncle's farm. In return for doing some simple work tidying up around the farm, I was allowed to brush, feed and ride Style, a 16-2 grey heavyweight hunter. I'm sure now that Style never realised that anyone was on his back. We were only allowed to ride in one field, and my friend and I would jump on the horses without any hats, no saddle, no bridle, and set off around the field as fast as we could go. I looked after Style every weekend, rain or shine, for a full year. I think by this time my mum realised that I was not going to get this out of her system. Okay, you have 1 week to buy a horse. I only have £500 to spend, and if you don't get one this week, then we will be buying a new 3-piece suite. That was the ultimatum I was given when I was 13. Where do you buy a horse? I didn't know. I wasn't going to let this little lack of knowledge foil me. I was being given a chance to get something that I had wanted all my life, and I wouldn't let it slip away. I picked up the yellow pages and looked up horses. See dealers was the suggestion, so I looked up dealers. The nearest horse dealers to us was Billy Stewart in Lesmahago. So, taking the bull by the horns, I phoned the yard. I think that whoever answered the call must have thought I was mucking about. Hello, I want to buy a horse. Do you have any for sale? Yes, was the reply. I was stumped. What do I say now? How much are they? Well, how much do you want to spend? Should I tell him the full price, or should I play it cool? At that point, my mum overheard my conversation. Taking the phone off of me, she apologised to the man and saved the day. It was agreed we would go down to the yard and look at 2 horses. The dealer felt they might be suitable for me. We arrived at the yard that night. My mum, dad and Gran. She was brought along because she knew about horses from Papa. We were all squashed into the car. Mr. Stewart was there to meet us along with his head lad. He took us into his main stable block, and I was awestruck at the glorious animals and beautiful rugs. Those are show jumpers, hen. I think they're a bit too expensive for you, was the response to my wide-eyed appreciation. This one here would be good for your daughter, Mr. Stewart continued to my mum and dad. I looked at a pretty little bay pony with big friendly eyes and a cheeky face. I liked him, but he was smaller than I had wanted. I was looking for a 15-2, I said, trying to sound knowledgeable. I had read in a book that this was a good average height for horses, and I knew that even if I grew a bit taller, I would still be able to ride a 15-2. Oh, right. Let's look at this one then. I was led to another stall with a larger grey horse lurking within. I didn't like the look on his face when the door opened, and Mr. Stewart held me back and told me to let his lad bring the horse out. It's all right, I said. I don't like this one very much. Could I see the bay again, please? Mr. Stewart patiently took us back to the little bay. This horse is older and more experienced than what you were looking for. I know you wanted a 5-year-old, but I think this horse will teach your daughter better. It's a competition horse and it's ready to do shows." My mum and dad nodded, agreeing with Mr. Stewart's sound advice. "He's a little bit more expensive though, this one's 800. My mum and dad's face fell. There was no way we could afford that much. My heart hit my boots. I was going to lose out after all. At that moment I heard a clatter of hoofs behind me. Looking round, I saw what looked like an enormous black stallion with a white face pawing the ground in frustration. "Is that a stallion?" I asked in awe. "No, hen. That's a mare just off the boat for the island. She's only angry because she can't eat her hay quickly with the bit in her mouth. She's just a baby, you see, only 4, never been ridden, and as green as grass." "Can I see her?" I asked. Mr. Stewart obliged and opened the stable door. His lad took off the dumb jockey that the mare was wearing to get her used to the bit and bridle. The horse immediately moved to the back of the box, her side pressed against the back wall, her head high in fear and confusion. She was almost black with 4 white socks and a white blaze. I walked straight up to her. Careful hen, she's just a baby," said Mr. Stewart. I wasn't afraid. I could hear my papa. And he was saying to me, "This is your horse. Take her." I touched her shoulder and gently patted her. Turning to Mr. Stewart, I said, "I want this one, please." His response was one of concern and worry. "Listen, hen, this is just a young horse. She's never been ridden. I don't know what she's like. I can't tell you anything about her. Look, why don't you look at the other horse again? They can be ridden now." "It's all right. I know I want this one." I looked at my mum and dad and they recognised the determination on my face. "But Morag, listen to what Mr. Stewart says. He knows about these things," was the half-hearted response. At that point my gran spoke up. "If this is the one the Wayne wants, then this is the one she should have." Mr. Stewart must have realised he was fighting a losing battle. "How much is this horse?" asked my dad. "Look, I'll give her to you for £500, replied Mr. Stewart, "but here's a suggestion. I don't sell anything from this yard that I don't know about. Leave the horse here for a week. I'll back her, I'll break her, I'll school the other 2, and then your daughter can ride all 3 next time and decide which one she wants. If after a month it doesn't work out, I'll take the horse back again. How's that?" And so it was agreed. A week later we were back at the yard. I only wanted to see the wee dark mare, but I was given a ride on the grey first. The horse was obedient and well schooled, but all I could think about was the wee dark mare. Finally Mr. Stewart let me ride her, and she was very, very green. All she could do was walk, trot, and a rather scrappy canter. I could tell that she didn't really have a clue as to what I wanted her to do, but she tried her best, and that is what impressed me. She didn't understand, but she had the courage and kindness to try and please a total stranger. "I still want this one," I gasped as I pulled her to a stop. It was a done deal. Mr. Stewart must have felt sorry for us. He sold us the horse, saddle, bridle, head collar, and delivered her to the yard I was going to keep her at for a mere £550. The day she arrived, he led her off the horse box, handed me the rope, and I led her the 1/4 mile walk down the driveway of the yard. That was the first time I and my friend and companion for the next 20 years really met each other.